Normal looking photos that have a disturbing backstory, part 11. The girl wearing the veil is Elizabeth Smart, who was kidnapped for 9 months by the man on the far right. This photo was taken at a party the kidnapper crashed with Elizabeth, and she was forced to wear this veil at all times to keep her from being recognized in public. While this photo may seem like a bunch of astronauts hanging out at the pool and having a great time, it's actually the crew of Apollo 1. They died inside the capsule on the left, unable to escape the fire. This is Chernobyl elephant's foot, a massive radiation from the reactor core meltdown. If you hang around it for too long, it becomes deadly, but not nearly as much as in 1986. It's so deadly that they had to use a set of mirrors to take this photograph. This photo was just taken after LBJ became president following the assassination of John F. Kennedy. In the front, you'll see Jackie Kennedy grieving her husband's death. LBJ turned toward his lifelong friend, Texas Congressman Albert Thomas, who gave him a wink and a smile.
Dumbest Criminals in the History, Part 2. Jezian Morris, 20, was wanted for violating the terms of his parole. One thing you don't want to do when you're wanted is to be seen. Although he didn't think about this, he and his friends posted a ice bucket challenge that went viral. Someone noticed Morris and called the cops. Morris was then stopped by the cops. He then showed a fake ID to the police, who then arrested him. He was then sentenced to more charges than he should have if he would have acted right.
Places you should never swim, Part 1. Firstly, the boiling lake of Dominica. What makes it so dangerous is the boiling magma under the surface. It's so hot that swimming in it would burn all the skin off your body. Jacob's Well is a lake located in Texas. It's so clear that you can see right to the bottom, but if you ever swam down here, you wouldn't make it out alive. The lake is filled with hidden caves, so finding a way out would be nearly impossible. Finally, the Nile River. It's filled with crocodiles everywhere that could kill you. And if you somehow escape the crocodiles, you'll have to get through snakes. And as you try to get out, you'll run into at least 15 venomous species.
Yesterday we talked about the satanic idol from the Warrens Museum, but today we're talking about the Doll of Shadows. According to Ed Warren, this doll was created with the intent of causing harm through dark rituals. The face is made out of a papier-mâché material, while the mouth is fitted with a single human tooth on the inside. Black feathers are placed on top of the doll's head, while nails and animal bones protrude from the doll itself. The story behind it is a young couple of doll collectors pick up this item from an antique dealer, who practically gives it away to them. Warning sign number 1. On the first night that the couple brings the doll home, they go to bed and everything is normal, until both of them experience a series of horrific nightmares. And when they wake up, it's claimed that there's scratches all over their bodies. The following night, they experience another series of nightmares. Except this time, they wake up with distinct claw marks all over their bodies. Fearing that things will only continue to amplify, they reach out to the Warrens. Ed goes to their home and they just say, "Take it, just take it." And ever since, the doll has remained in the care of the Warrens. Over the years, Ed shared the process of how this doll would be used. It's claimed that somebody practicing dark magic would first take a photo of the doll. The photo would be printed, and on the back, a curse would be written. That photo would then be sent to the victim. Through the gesture of the recipient opening the envelope, it was symbolic of them accepting the curse that was written on the back of the photo. Furthermore, once that recipient saw the image of the doll, that meant the doll could then be projected into their dreams. But none of y'all try to send me a photo with this doll and some scribble on the back. I'm not playing that game. Ed stated that the doll couldn't just be destroyed, since it acts as a vessel for the negative entity. So that brings us to, what item do you want to talk about next? A big thank you to those who recommended this topic on the last video. And aside from paranormal, I love all things true crime, spooky, unusual. So if you have any other suggestions on videos that you'd like to see, please feel free to comment below.
Famous TikTokers before and after puberty, part 1. Well, Huddy really went from a Musical.ly king to our melanin king. Addison doesn't even look like the same person here. She went from looking like the hot Cheeto girl to Margaret damn Roby. Josh Richards looks exactly like this kid. Like, Josh, you got a fresh cut, didn't you? I spent hours on the internet looking for a picture of Charli D'Amelio, and this was the best I could come up with. Tell me why she looks the exact same. Charlie, explain to me why when you were 7 years old you looked better than I do now. I'm not kidding. I want answers. Here are some facts that you probably didn't know that one day could save your life. Part 2. If you ever fall off the edge of a subway platform and onto the tracks, don't waste your time trying to crawl back up. There's a crawl space built for a person to go underneath in case this happens. If you ever for some reason ingest windshield wiper fluid or antifreeze, drink large amounts of vodka to keep it from shredding your kidneys to give you time to get to a hospital. If a tornado looks like it's not moving, it's actually moving toward you. If you accidentally disturb a beehive or wasp's nest, do not run for the water. They'll wait for you to resurface and then resume stinging you. Just run as fast and as far away as you can, because eventually they'll stop following you. If a deer is running across the road, it's better to hit it than swerve and run into a ditch. But if there's a moose in the middle of the road, swerve and run into a ditch. Hitting a moose is like running into a brick wall.
It's what she finds in the kitchen that's really scary. In the early 90s, a young girl was sleeping in her mom's bed when she suddenly woke up for no reason. She looked at her door and she saw her very affectionate cat kind of meowing down the hall as if someone was coming up to pet it, but she was next to her mom and they were the only ones in the house. The girl shakes her mom awake and points to the cat just as a man is walking past the door and disappears into the room across the hall. Before the man could come back out and find them, they both jump out the window, run across the street, and call the police. When the police arrive, the guy is nowhere to be found, but they do discover that the front door was unlocked, so that had to be the way he got in and out. But the mother swears up and down that she locked that door before she went to bed. A week later, the mother's cleaning their kitchen and she opens up the water heater closet where she finds this notebook that inside is their names and pictures of them in it, along with a pair of surgical gloves. Which means someone had snuck in at some point, was living in that closet spying on them, and then walking around their house at night.
How Animals See Part 2. This is how rabbits see. Unlike humans, they do not have an indented pupil. This causes rabbits to have a static effect to their vision. This is how flies see. Flies have around 4,000 lenses on their eyes. Flies also have 5 eyes. This is how your dog sees the world. Humans have 3 eye cones, but dogs only have 2. This means dogs can't see the colors red or green. Their eyes can be compared to a human who's colorblind. This is how shrimp see. They have 16 photoreceptors, and these divide ultraviolet light into distinct colors. Tips that could save your life one day. When you go into a bathroom or changing room, make sure no one's looking at you using a two-way mirror. A two-way mirror means that someone on the other side could be looking at you, but there's an easy way to tell the difference. Put your finger on the surface of the mirror. If there's a gap between your finger and its reflection, then you're safe. But if there isn't, then it's a two-way mirror. If you're in an emergency and need to get to one floor straight away without any stops in an elevator, here's what to do. Press the closed door button and the floor you want to go to. Keep holding them down until you reach that floor. This will bypass any stops, and it's often used by emergency services. What if you're driving a car and suddenly you fall into water? You won't be able to open your car's door because of the water pressure closing it shut. You actually need to roll down your window. This will allow some water to go into the car. The pressure will then equalize and the doors will open automatically and you can swim out.
Safest countries to live if WW3 breaks out. Switzerland. Tuvalu. New Zealand. Bhutan. Chile. Iceland. Canada. South Africa. Greenland.
Here are facts you didn't know that one day could save your life. If you're ever buried in rubble, yelling will only waste your energy. Look for something to grab and tap in intervals of 3, and rescuers will notice this strange pattern. If a tornado looks like it's standing still, this means it's actually moving towards you. If your drink randomly smells like cinnamon, don't drink it. People often use it to cover up the scent of actual poison. If your house ever smells like fish for no reason, 9 times out of 10, it's because there's an electrical fire. If you ever wake up to the smell of gas, don't turn on a light. A spark from the light switch could blow up your entire house. Lying flat on your back is the best way to survive a falling elevator. If your hair suddenly stands up, duck and cover because you're about to be struck by lightning. If you ever fall off the edge onto the tracks, don't try and crawl back up. There's a crawl space built to go underneath in case this happens. If you ever get kidnapped into the back of a vehicle, disconnect the brake light wire so the cops will pull them over, then kick on the door to let them know that you're there.
It was Christmas Eve, and 11-year-old Juliet was decorating the tree. It was getting late, and her mother called her and said she would be home from work a bit late tonight. Juliet said okay and continued decorating the tree until she was finished. She relaxed for a bit and stared out of the 6th floor apartment window at the skyline of the city when suddenly she began to hear scratching at her front door. She then went up to the door and listened and looked through the peephole and saw a man dressed as Santa. Nervous, Juliet asked, "Who's there?" "It's Santa Claus. Let me in. I'm cold and hungry," said the man. She knew this wasn't Santa and said, "My mom's not home. Can you please leave?" Juliet watched through the peephole as the man's face turned angry and he began banging the door and twisting the doorknob. He then screamed, "It's Santa, Juliet. Give me my damn milk and cookies." Juliet's stomach dropped. She was terrified now. How did he know her name? She then threatened to call the cops and the man finally stopped and walked down the hallway. Suddenly, the man came running back down the hallway with an axe in his hand and began striking the door with it until it broke. Juliet ran and hid in a closet. The man entered the apartment and began saying, "Juliet, my pretty, where are you?" He then opened a closet door and suddenly Juliet jumped at him and stabbed him in the eye with a coat hanger. The man screamed and yanked it from his eye and grabbed Juliet and held her on the ground. He then whispered in her ear, "You can scream and beg for your life, but naughty girls get the axe and nice girls get the knife." Juliet's mother returned home a little after midnight and saw her door hacked to pieces. She ran inside to make sure her daughter was okay. She looked around and began screaming in horror. The Christmas tree was decorated with Juliet's organs, and her head was perched at the top like a star. These are pictures with the most disturbing backstories, part 2. This is 19-year-old Deborah Bessa. And on January 9th, 2018, she disappeared. And 2 days later, her family learned that the girl had been kidnapped during a robbery in the city of Rio Branco, in the Brazilian state of Acre. And a short time later, a video of her execution began circulating on social media. The footage shows Deborah on her knees begging for her life, saying she did nothing wrong. But one of the men, the one holding the machete, tells Deborah to look at the camera and tells her that she was guilty of killing his brothers. Further footage of the video shows them cutting off her head and then stabbing her in the stomach. According to Deborah's sister, Sarah Bessa, Deborah was a member of a drug cartel but decided to leave them because she wanted a better life for her 5-year-old daughter. Some sources even state that Deborah was supposed to be hiding from the gang in church. They managed to catch one of the men in the video, the one holding the machete, and then one woman, Lucio Souza, who was also supposed to participate in the execution. Both were sentenced to 60 years in prison, but after the appeal, however, the man holding the machete in the video got his sentence reduced to only 36.5 years. They were both members of a well-known Brazilian cartel. I warn you never to look up this video because it's absolutely disturbing. Your hands will be shaking and your stomach will be turning.
It hasn't even been 24 hours of 2025 and a lot has happened already. Early this morning, a Cybertruck in Las Vegas exploded outside of a Trump hotel. If you look at the footage, it kind of looks like there were fireworks going off after the explosion. Apparently, people saw smoke coming out of the car before it exploded, but that doesn't explain why someone would remain in the car if that was the case. Unfortunately, the person inside the car did pass away and there were 7 other people that were injured. People instantly believe that this was a malfunction of the car because we've seen Teslas catch on fire before, but we've never seen them explode out of nowhere. But Elon Musk recently came out with a statement and he said that the explosion was caused by very large fireworks and or bombs, and it was carried in the bed of the rented Cybertruck, and it's unrelated to the vehicle itself. I've been seeing a lot of Cybertrucks lately, but after seeing this, I think I'm just gonna stay away from them for now.
How many animals humans eat every year? Sea urchins, camels. I didn't even know camels were edible. Horses, we ride though. Cats, who's eating kids? Tilapia, I eat that all the time. Snails, I love a seafood. Dogs, how is dogs even up there? Guinea pigs, shark, I can see. You know what I mean? Get them out. Cows, oh my god, 300 million cows. 500 million lambs. Lobster, oh my god, that's probably me. I probably eat all that lobster. Turkey, salmon, I get it. Tuna, 900 million? I've never even seen people like rabbit like that. Octopus, I guess 2 billion? 2 billion oysters. 2 billion, yo, wow. This is a year. Shrimp, I understand, I love shrimp. Sardines, I eat sardines too. 75 billion.
Tallest statues in the world. Japan. Hokkaido Cannon 289 feet. Thailand. Great Buddha of Thailand 300 feet. China. Gishin Guanyin 325 feet. Japan. Sendai Daikanon 330 feet. Japan. Ashiku Daibutsu 335 feet. India. Statue of Belief 351 feet. Myanmar. Lake Sekir 380 feet. China. Spring Temple Buddha 420 feet. India. Statue of Unity 599 feet.
He's the smallest prisoner in the world, and you'll never guess the terrible things he did. Part 2. 7-year-old Danny became the smallest prisoner in the world after committing a horrifying act. While his parents went out for a quick errand, he was left in charge of his 15-month-old sister. During their absence, Danny put his sister in the oven and turned it on. When the parents returned and found the oven on, they rushed to the kitchen. They found the baby unharmed, but the oven was filled with burnt toys. Danny confessed that he was trying to cook the toys to see if they would turn into something new. Shocked by his coldness, the parents sought police help, but it was later determined that psychological help was needed. Danny was admitted for treatment, and the story sparked a debate about children's behavior and proper supervision. Do you watch your kids closely? Follow the profile for real stories.
A 24-year-old mukbanger just died after her stomach ripped open on live stream. This was also a 10-hour live stream. It was very lengthy and she was consuming a lot of things, cake, chicken, everything, you name it. She was a Chinese woman by the name of Pan Xiaoting. She died last week from a stomach rupture on the live stream after consuming over 15 pounds of food. The autopsy report suggested that her stomach literally ripped open because there was a lot of undigested food in there and the stomach was distended. This was not the first incident either. She was hospitalized a few months ago for her stomach bleeding for the same thing, eating a lot of food on a live stream. And it's sad too, because even her parents are begging her to stop. A lot of mukbang culture has become a little toxic. The more outrageous it gets, the more viewers, these people get and the more money they make. It kind of incentivizes them to destroy their bodies in this way. I really feel for this young girl and her family. It's just so sad. Hopefully other mukbangers see this and they take this as like a warning. Just be more careful. Your stomach can literally rupture. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, these videos are for informational purposes only. This is Margaret Schilling, and she disappeared under some mysterious circumstances. She was a patient in Athens Mental Health and Development Center. She was playing hide and seek with one of the nurses. Now here's where things get suspicious.
There are over 2,000 patients housed in this asylum, and they could not find her. They found her about a month later in January. Her body was lifeless, and because she was deaf and mute, she couldn't really communicate. When they moved her body, this was left, and no matter how much they washed it or power washed it, it would not come out. It's speculated her body went under saponification, which is when your skin and your body literally just turned into soap. Even till this day, her stain is still in there. But let's be real here, a game of hide and seek, and you couldn't find her? This was definitely planned, and I think they definitely murdered her. And although she was deaf and mute, why didn't she get up from that spot? It makes me think there was some sort of trauma involved, blunt force trauma, and somebody left her there. It really doesn't make sense that she would be there for an entire month into the new year. Something about this story is very, very fishy to me. It's also very sad because she should not have been treated that way. What are your thoughts and your theories on this story? And as always, these videos are for informational and entertainment purposes only, guys.
I'm gonna ruin your childhood, part 26. All the characters in Winnie the Pooh represent mental disorders. Christopher Robin represents schizophrenia. Winnie the Pooh represents an eating disorder. Eeyore represents depression. Tigger represents ADHD. Piglet represents anxiety. Rabbit represents OCD. Roo represents autism. Owl represents narcissism.
He's the reason why parents started to check Halloween candy to make sure it was safe. On Halloween night in 1974, Ronald Clark O'Brien poisoned his own children's Halloween candy by lacing large pixie sticks with cyanide. After a night full of trick-or-treating, the family returns home where Ronald tells his children that they could each have one piece of candy before bed, and horrifically, his 8-year-old son Timothy chooses to eat the pixie stick. Just when you think that this case can't get worse, it does, because when 8-year-old Timothy opens the pixie stick and starts to eat it, he complains immediately that it tastes bitter because of the cyanide, and his father had the heart to just look at this little face and tell him, "I'll get you Kool-Aid to wash it down," very well knowing what was going to happen. Ronald would later tell police from the moment that he gave Timothy the Kool-Aid and shut the door, it took only 30 seconds until Timothy started to cry, "Daddy, Daddy, my stomach hurts." He was in the bathroom, convulsing, vomiting, and gasping, and then suddenly he went limp. Tragically, on the way to the hospital, Timothy passes away less than an hour after eating the candy. Immediately, this crime sent shockwaves through the community, initially sparking widespread fear that a stranger had tampered with the candy. However, suspicion quickly fell on Ronald when investigators uncovered his financial troubles, since he was more than $100,000 in debt and recently took out life insurance policies on both his children. During the investigation, it was discovered that he had also handed out more poisoned candy to other children that night, but fortunately, none of them consumed it. Prior to Halloween night, police discovered that Ronald had contacted multiple chemical companies to buy cyanide and even jokingly asked them how much it would take to end somebody's life. In 1975, Ronald O'Brien was convicted of murder and was later executed by lethal injection in 1984, although he never admitted guilt, and even in his last words, he denied any wrongdoing. Ultimately, his crime left a lasting mark on Halloween in America, fueling paranoia around tainted candy for years to come. In the end, I'm glad that this monster got what he deserves. I can't comprehend what kind of person could harm any kid, let alone their own kid. And as always, follow along if you're a fan of all things interesting and horrific.